Peter Grosskopf, CEO of Sprott. Thank you so much for joining us here on the sidelines of the Minds and Money Conference in Toronto.
Well, thanks for having me.
You are a keynote speaker. So I was watching, another interview you had recently given, and you said, after a tough 8 years for gold, really tough 8 years, this could possibly be a growth year for the metal. But, looking at the price right now, how can gold turn it around?
Well, I think that gold is like a chameleon. It attaches itself to what it wants to at the time. And at this time, I think that gold is mostly a hedge asset. And the most obvious way that it can turn it around right now is for the the large financial markets, credit and equity markets, to change their tone. So we've seen that since the Fed made its moves in December, that the rest of the markets have done very well, and that conversely has hurt gold. And so US dollar, right. Equity markets, credit markets, crack in any one of those, and I think gold has a good chance this year.
What about the robust GDP numbers we saw last Friday? Now, I personally was surprised that gold was not brought down by the news. It actually rallied off of that news. But long term, if the economy is looking stronger, feeling stronger, wouldn't this be a negative for the metal?
Well, you could be right. However, I think that when you look inside that GDP number, it's not quite as strong as it looks. And even if it were strong, I think that real rates remain at totally repressed levels. So really that should be good for gold. If you've got inflation, but you've got very low interest rates, negative real rates should actually be good for gold, bad for currencies.
Who are you seeing? Who's buying gold?
I think increasingly more sophisticated investors. So we've seen physical offtake continue to come from India and China. We've seen some central bank buying, and we've seen large investors. We ourselves on the front lines have seen large investors allocating to gold. And those are investors generally that are worried about interest rates, worried about actually rates going back up.
Which products are they buying amongst your offerings? What are you seeing that where's the appetite?
They usually go to bullion first. And after that, they look at private equity and private debt strategies. And I would say, unfortunately, the public equities are usually last in line.
You've also talked to us in the past about a new line you're moving in, and that's digital gold.
Yes.
How do you see this fitting into the gold landscape?
Well, as per my presentation today, I think it's going to be very important in the long run. Gold will never achieve regular consumer acceptance in your average household unless it's easily usable. And I think it was quite realistic to criticize gold because you weren't going to go to a gas station and pay for your fill-up with gold coins. But now, when gold can be digitized, put on the blockchain, moved around very easily, quickly, low cost between financial accounts, and it will even be used as a payment metric. There's going to be cards coming out where you can use your gold to pay for things, including foreign purchases when you're traveling.
So this is the future.
I think this is the future. I think it needs the gold to be adapted by. Gold is in the end a monetary replacement, and in order to be an effective monetary replacement, it needs to be used by a wider base.
Now we're also seeing similar products that are backed by silver. Do you think there's a preference there with having digital gold versus digital silver?
I think gold is more like money. I think the silver buyers, though, have a legitimate point, which is when gold moves, silver usually moves more. So I think investors in general tend to be real silver bugs because they're looking for that dramatic move, which we think, by the way, is coming.
So when people watch this, they're going to say, well, digital gold, is that like a Bitcoin?
It is like a Bitcoin in that it can be moved around like a Bitcoin, but it's much more secure. So
because it's actually backed by the physical metal.
It's actually backed by the physical metal, and it actually has a ledger that is being tracked, and that tracked ledger means that the gold can't be hacked.
So it's a world where gold and blockchain can coexist.
In fact, it's the perfect asset for the blockchain.
So overall, your sentiment in the market, Peter, Sprott's been bullish a long time. That's the forecast?
Nobody likes gold right now, and we're contrarian. And we think there's great investment opportunities across the spectrum in gold, even if it doesn't move. But at some point in the next few years, those other markets will have problems, and when they have problems, gold will be an amazing hedge, and will.
Finally, Peter, you have results coming out next week. What's your message to shareholders? What can they expect?
Well, Sprott is steady as she goes. It is a company that has been built to manage a lot more assets, but even at today's levels, we pay a very good dividend and we have a decent cash flow stream. So our message is to investors is we pay you to wait. Sprott is like a bit of a royalty company on a large gold asset portfolio, so we have built a lot of leverage to the upside, and I think it'll be more of the same, more of you're being paid to wait.
Final question to you, Peter. You mentioned royalties, which made me think mining. What did you think, or what do you think about the consolidation that's taking place in the mining space?
It's very interesting, right? First of all, they had to go for those synergies. I think the big guys had to take the lead. I think there will be a wave taking the smaller companies up, because there's never been a time where valuations have been more disconnected between large companies and small.
And is this something you think investors want to see, companies coming together? They don't want to invest in just a single mine here?
Of course. It helps investors, it helps diversify risk, it helps lower overheads, and it helps increase their liquidity. So,
Peter, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. Thank you for coming on the show.
Okay.